The gavel's sharp crack echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot, but Robert Whitmore barely heard it. His heart hammered so violently against his ribs that he was certain everyone could hear it. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning, and his hands that had signed billion-dollar deals without trembling, shook uncontrollably as he gripped the edge of the defendant's table. "This is it," he whispered to himself, the words barely audible. 25 years of building everything, and it could all end today. His daughter Sarah's face flashed through his mind, the disappointment in her eyes when the charges were announced, the way she'd stopped taking his calls. His late wife's voice seemed to whisper from somewhere beyond, "Robert, what have you done?" But he hadn't done anything. That was the cruel irony eating him alive. Beside him, Marcus Steinberg, the man he'd trusted with his life, his closest friend for 15 years, sat hunched over a stack of papers. Robert had paid him $3 million, emptied his personal accounts, mortgaged his soul to afford the best defense money could buy. Marcus had promised him victory just yesterday, had looked him in the eye and said, "Trust me, Robert, I've got this." "Marcus," Robert whispered, his voice cracking with desperation. "Tell me again. Tell me we're going to beat this." But Marcus wouldn't look at him. His face was ashen, his usually perfect hair disheveled, and his hands, those steady surgeon's hands that had never failed in court, were visibly trembling. The prosecutor, District Attorney Catherine Mills, stood like a predator savoring her moment. Her voice cut through the air with surgical precision. "Your Honor, the evidence against Mr. Whitmore is overwhelming. Financial records clearly show." That's when Robert's world exploded. Marcus suddenly lurched to his feet, his chair clattering backward with a sound that made everyone in the packed courtroom flinch. Papers scattered across the floor like fallen leaves, and his briefcase tumbled open, spilling documents everywhere. "Your Honor," Marcus's voice came out strangled, barely recognizable. I can no longer represent this client." The words hit Robert like a sledgehammer to the chest. Time seemed to freeze. The blood drained from his face so quickly he thought he might faint. "What?" The word escaped his lips as a broken whisper, but in the sudden, suffocating silence, it seemed to echo off the walls. "Marcus!" Robert's voice climbed higher, panic seizing his throat. "What are you doing? What are you saying?" But Marcus was already backing away from the table, his face a mask of terror and something else. Guilt? Shame? Robert couldn't tell, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. "I am formally withdrawing as counsel," Marcus announced to the stunned courtroom, his voice gaining strength as if he were trying to convince himself. Effective immediately. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Reporters shot to their feet, cameras flashed, spectators gasped and whispered frantically. But Robert heard none of it. His world had narrowed to this single, devastating moment of betrayal. "You can't." Robert lunged forward, grasping desperately at Marcus's sleeve. "You promised me. You said you'd fight for me. You said." "I'm sorry." Marcus jerked away, his eyes wild with something that looked like pure terror. "I cannot. I will not continue this case." He was stuffing papers into his briefcase with shaking hands, not even looking at what he was grabbing. "Your Honor, I request immediate permission to leave." Robert felt his chest constricting, his breathing becoming rapid and shallow. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. "But you know I'm innocent. You know I didn't take that money." "Marcus, please." For just a moment, Marcus stopped. Their eyes met, and Robert saw something that chilled him to the bone. Not just fear, but pity. Deep, profound pity. "I know nothing," Marcus said quietly, his words falling like stones into still water. "Nothing at all." Then he was gone, practically running toward the exit, leaving Robert alone and defenseless in front of hundreds of witnesses and a prosecutor who was now smiling like a shark that had just tasted blood. Robert collapsed back into his chair, his entire body shaking. The man who'd been his best friend, who'd held his hand through his wife's funeral, who'd been like a brother to him, had just destroyed him in the most public, humiliating way possible. In the back row, unnoticed by the chaos consuming the front of the courtroom, A small, elderly woman in a worn black dress pressed a crumpled envelope against her chest. Maria Gonzalez had cleaned their offices, served their meals, and kept their secrets for 20 years. She'd watched, she'd listened, and she'd remained silent. 3 hours later, the courtroom felt like a tomb. Robert sat slumped in his chair, his expensive suit wrinkled and sweat-stained, looking like a man who'd aged a decade in a single afternoon. The court-appointed attorney beside him, a nervous young public defender named Jenkins who looked barely out of law school, shuffled through files with trembling hands, clearly overwhelmed by the magnitude of the case that had just landed in his lap. District Attorney Catherine Mills stood at the prosecutor's table like a conquering general, her confidence radiating through the room. She'd been waiting for this moment, building this case for 2 years, and now with Marcus Steinberg's shocking departure, victory was within her grasp. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice smooth and commanding. "What you witnessed earlier today was nothing short of a confession. When a man's own attorney, a man who has known him for 15 years, abandons him in open court, what does that tell you about the strength of his case?" Robert's head snapped up, his eyes blazing with desperate fury. "Objection!" he started to shout, but Jenkins quickly pulled him back down. "You can't object," Jenkins whispered frantically. "You're not a lawyer. Let me handle this." But Jenkins's objection was weak, his voice shaky, and Judge Harrison overruled it with barely a glance. The young attorney was drowning, and everyone in the courtroom could see it. Mills continued her devastating assault, each word calculated to destroy what remained of Robert's credibility. "The evidence is overwhelming. Bank records show $40 million systematically transferred from the Whitmore Foundation to offshore accounts. Money that was supposed to build schools for underprivileged children instead lined the defendant's pockets." She clicked a remote, and the large screen behind her illuminated with damning financial documents. Transaction after transaction, all authorized by Robert Whitmore's personal banking codes, his signature on every transfer order, his fingerprints on the documents. Robert felt the walls closing in around him. Every piece of evidence looked exactly like what it was designed to look like, proof of his guilt. But he knew the truth. Someone had set him up, had used his codes, had forged his signature with surgical precision. But how could he prove it without Marcus? How could he fight this alone? Furthermore, Mills's voice rose triumphantly. "We have testimony from bank employees who personally witnessed Mr. Whitmore making these transfers. We have security footage of him entering the bank on the days in question. We have—" "Excuse me." The voice was so quiet, so hesitant, that at first no one was sure they'd heard it. But then it came again, slightly stronger, heavily accented with the cadence of someone for whom English was a second language. "Excuse me, please." Every head in the courtroom turned toward the back row, where a small, elderly woman had risen to her feet. She was perhaps 5 feet tall, with silver hair pulled back in a simple bun, wearing a black dress that had seen better days. Her weathered hands clutched a worn manila envelope against her chest like a shield. Judge Harrison squinted over his glasses. "Ma'am, this is a closed proceeding. If you're not—" "I am Maria Gonzalez," she said, her voice gaining strength despite her obvious terror. "I work for Mr. Robert for 20 years. I clean his office. I serve his meals. I know things." The prosecutor's confident smile faltered for just a moment. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The witness list was closed weeks ago. This woman cannot simply—" "I know about the money," Maria interrupted, her voice cutting through the prosecutor's objection like a knife through silk. "I know about the night it happened. I was there." The courtroom fell into absolute silence. Even the reporters stopped scribbling. Robert's head whipped around, his eyes wide with shock and something that might have been hope. Maria's hands shook as she clutched the envelope tighter. "I no speak good English. I am just the maid. Nobody see me. Nobody ask me questions. But I see everything. I hear everything. And I know Mr. Robert, he no take this money." District Attorney Mills shot to her feet, her face flushed with anger. "Your Honor, this is a clear attempt to manipulate the proceedings. This woman has had months to come forward. Her sudden appearance now is obviously. Let her speak, Judge Harrison said quietly, leaning forward with interest. Ma'am, you understand you're in a court of law? You understand the seriousness of what you're saying. Maria nodded, tears beginning to stream down her weathered cheeks. I understand. I understand I should speak before, but I am scared. I am scared of losing my job, scared of losing my family, scared of... She glanced toward the prosecutor's table, then back at the judge. Scared of what they do to me if I tell the truth. Robert was staring at her now, his mind racing. Maria had been in his household for 20 years, but she was like part of the furniture. Always there, always quiet, always invisible. He'd barely spoken to her beyond polite greetings. But she'd been there. She'd seen things. She'd heard things. What do you know about the money, Mrs. Gonzalez? Judge Harrison asked gently. Maria's voice was barely a whisper. I know who really take it. I know who put it in Mr. Robert's name. I know who make him look guilty. She held up the envelope with shaking hands. And I have proof. The prosecutor's face had gone pale. Your Honor, without proper authentication, without advance notice, this alleged evidence cannot be. I have pictures, Maria said simply. I have papers. I have things that show the truth. Robert felt his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst. Hope, real, tangible hope, was flooding through him for the first time in months. But he could also see the terror in Maria's eyes, the way her entire body was trembling. Speaking up wasn't just risky for her. It was potentially devastating. As an undocumented worker, she could be deported. As someone who'd kept silent for months, she could be charged with obstruction of justice. As someone who'd witnessed what she claimed to have witnessed, she could be in real danger. Maria, Robert called out, his voice cracking with emotion. You don't have to do this. You don't have to risk everything for me. She turned to look at him, and for the first time in 20 years, they really saw each other. Not employer and employee, not rich man and poor woman, but two human beings connected by a moment of truth. Mr. Robert, she said, her voice steady despite her tears. You were a good man. You deserve this. Your wife, she was good to me. Your daughter, she helped my grandson with school. I cannot watch them destroy you with lies. She turned back to the judge, her small frame somehow seeming to fill the entire courtroom. I ready to tell the truth now. All of it. No matter what it cost me. The prosecutor was frantically whispering to her assistants. Her earlier confidence completely shattered. She knew something that made her afraid of what this quiet woman might reveal. And for the first time since Marcus had walked out of that courtroom, Robert Whitmore allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he might survive this after all. Maria walked slowly toward the witness stand, her worn black shoes clicking against the marble floor with each deliberate step. The entire courtroom held its breath, watching this small woman who had been invisible for 20 years suddenly command the attention of everyone present. Her hand still clutched the manila envelope, and with each step, it seemed to grow heavier, more significant. Judge Harrison gestured gently toward the witness chair. Please, Mrs. Gonzalez, take your time. As Maria settled into the chair, she seemed even smaller against the imposing wooden structure, but her dark eyes held a steely determination that hadn't been there before. She placed the envelope carefully on the small table beside her, her fingers lingering on it protectively. District Attorney Mills approached the stand with barely contained hostility. Mrs. Gonzalez, you claim to have been present during the alleged crime. Yet you've remained silent for 8 months while Mr. Whitmore's case went to trial. Why should this court believe anything you say now? Maria's voice was quiet but unwavering. Because I was scared. Because I thought nobody would believe the maid. Because... She paused, her eyes finding Robert's across the courtroom. Because I thought Mr. Marcus would save him. I thought the truth would come out without me having to speak. And what exactly is this truth you claim to know? Mills pressed, her tone sharp and dismissive. Maria's weathered hands opened the envelope with deliberate care. The truth is that Mr. Robert, he never take the money. The truth is that I know who did take it. And the truth is that person, they sit in this courtroom right now. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Robert leaned forward, his heart pounding. Even Judge Harrison seemed more alert, his fingers steepled in front of him. "I clean the offices every night," Maria continued, her English becoming more fluent as her confidence grew. "I come at 9 o'clock when everyone's supposed to be gone. But that night, February 15th, I see lights still on in Mr. Marcus's office." The blood drained from Robert's face. Marcus? His Marcus? "I think maybe he forget to turn off the lights, so I go to check. But I hear voices. I hear typing. I hear." She paused, reaching into the envelope. "I hear Mr. Marcus talking to someone on the phone." She pulled out a small digital recorder, old and worn but still functional. "I always carry this. My grandson, he give it to me for English practice. That night I was so scared when I hear what they saying. I push the button. I record everything." District Attorney Mills's face had gone ashen. "Your Honor, this is completely inadmissible. Recorded without consent. Obtained illegally." "Let's hear what she has to say," Judge Harrison interrupted firmly. "Continue, Mrs. Gonzalez." Maria pressed play, and Marcus Steinberg's voice filled the courtroom, clear and unmistakable. "The transfers are complete. 40 million moved to the Cayman accounts, all under Robert's authorization codes. He'll never know what hit him." Robert felt like he'd been struck by lightning. The voice was definitely Marcus, his closest friend, his trusted attorney, the man who'd stood beside him through his wife's death and his daughter's wedding. Another voice came through the recording, muffled but audible. "And you're certain this will hold up in court?" "Robert trusts me completely," Marcus's voice continued with chilling coldness. "He gave me power of attorney over his financial affairs 2 years ago. I've been using his codes, his accounts, his signature stamp. By the time anyone realizes what happened, I'll be long gone and he'll be in prison." The courtroom erupted in chaos. Robert's court-appointed attorney shot to his feet. Reporters began shouting questions, and spectators gasped in shock. But Robert himself sat frozen, his world crumbling and rebuilding simultaneously. "Order! Order!" Judge Harrison banged his gavel repeatedly. "Mrs. Gonzalez, continue with your testimony." Maria's voice grew stronger, more confident. "I keep listening. I hear them talk about how they plan to make sure Mr. Robert get blamed. How they already put evidence in his computer, in his files. How they pay people to say they see him at the bank." She reached into the envelope again, this time pulling out a thick stack of photographs. "After I hear this, I know I need proof. So I start watching. I start taking pictures. I take pictures of Mr. Marcus in his office late at night. I take pictures of the papers he hide in his desk. I take pictures of the meetings he have with bad people." The photographs were grainy but clear enough. Marcus meeting with unknown individuals, transferring documents, accessing computer systems late at night when the building should have been empty. "But why?" Robert's voice cracked across the courtroom, raw with betrayal and confusion. "Marcus, why would you do this to me? We were friends." "We were. Because you had everything?" A new voice answered from the back of the courtroom. Every head turned to see Marcus Steinberg standing in the doorway, his face haggard, his expensive suit wrinkled. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "Because you had everything?" he repeated, walking slowly into the courtroom. "The money, the success, the beautiful wife, the loving daughter. And what did I have? What did I have after 30 years of cleaning up your messes, of making you look good, of living in your shadow?" His voice rose with each word, 30 years of resentment pouring out. "Do you know what it's like to watch your best friend build an empire while you're stuck taking his scraps? Do you know what it's like to smile and congratulate him while your own family struggles to pay bills?" "I trusted you," Robert whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I loved you like a brother. And I hated you for it." Marcus shot back, his mask finally dropping completely. "I hated your success, your happiness, your perfect life. So I decided to take it all away. The money was just the beginning. I was going to destroy everything you'd built, everything you were." District Attorney Mills was frantically conferring with her assistants, her case collapsing around her. The evidence she'd built so carefully, the witnesses she'd prepared. All of it had been orchestrated by Marcus Steinberg. "That's why you left me today," Robert said, understanding flooding through him. "You knew Maria was going to speak. You knew the truth was going to come out." Marcus nodded, his shoulders sagging with defeat. "I saw her in the gallery. I saw the envelope. I knew my time was up." Judge Harrison's voice cut through the emotional chaos. "Mr. Steinberg, you understand that you're confessing to multiple felonies in open court?" "I understand," Marcus replied wearily. "I'm tired of running. I'm tired of lying. I'm tired of being the man in Robert's shadow." As the bailiffs moved to arrest Marcus, Robert stood slowly, his legs shaking. Across the courtroom, Maria watched him with eyes full of compassion and understanding. This small, quiet woman who had been invisible for 20 years had just saved his life, his reputation, his future. "Maria," Robert called out, his voice breaking. "Thank you. Thank you for being brave enough to speak the truth." She smiled through her tears. "Mr. Robert, your wife, she once tell me that truth is like water. It always find a way to come out. I just help it find the way." As Marcus was led away in handcuffs, as the prosecutor's team scrambled to salvage what they could, as reporters rushed to file their stories, Robert realized that sometimes the people who save us are the ones we never expected. The ones who see everything while remaining invisible, who listen while staying silent, who love while asking for nothing in return. The maid who had destroyed the prosecutor's case hadn't just saved Robert Whitmore. She had reminded everyone in that courtroom that truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of surfacing when it matters most.